We have now Elizabeth Milner outside of the federal courthouse.
The courtroom didn't feel like it was holding a trial anymore. It felt like it was holding its breath. The last day had arrived. No more witnesses, no more exhibits, just closing arguments, and the man himself, Shaw Diddy Combs, sat perfectly still. At the defense table, staring straight ahead, eyes unfocused, as if he were already hearing something the rest of the room hadn't caught up to yet. He wasn't wearing a flashy suit, no designer sunglasses, no polished watch glinting under the fluorescent lights, just a simple black blazer, an open collar, and a face that had clearly not slept. The room was cold, unnaturally silent. No press were allowed inside, but the outside world was pressing in like thunder on the other side of a glass wall. The judge entered with gravity in his steps. He wasn't just presiding over a trial anymore. He was managing the collapse of a narrative that had once seemed untouchable. The jury sat rigid. Most had their hands folded. Some avoided eye contact with the defendant entirely. A few were still watching him intensely. The prosecution rose first. Their voice didn't rise. Their delivery wasn't dramatic. It didn't have to be. What they laid out was a story told piece by piece over the course of weeks. Financial records, sealed rooms, encrypted messages, loyalty bought and sold, and a silence paid for in fear. You've heard everything. The prosecutor said calmly, "Now ask yourself, does a man build an empire like that and never see what it's built on?" They sat down. The defense followed Diddy's attorney, didn't argue innocence. Instead, he painted a picture of complexity, of pressure, of a man pulled into storms of his own making, yes, but also shaped by a system that rewards ruthlessness. "It's not perfect," the attorney said, "but imperfection isn't guilt. And guilt, true guilt, requires more than just suspicion. It requires proof." And then it happened. Sean Combs stood, not rushed, not shaky, just certain, like this moment had already played itself out in his head 1,000 times before. His lawyer leaned toward him quickly, whispering, clearly trying to stop him. Diddy raised one hand and said something quietly. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Combs, are you requesting to speak?" Diddy looked up. "Yes, Your Honor, I am." The judge glanced to both legal teams. "This is highly unorthodox, but I'll allow it. This is your moment. Use it wisely." Before we dive deeper into this unforgettable video, make sure to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon. That way you'll never miss any new coming videos like this. Now let's get back to it. He walked slowly to the center of the courtroom toward the podium. His footsteps echoed off the walls. He placed his hands on the wood, leaned forward slightly, and looked at the judge, then the jury, then the gallery behind them. For a moment he just breathed. No one knew what he was going to say, but everyone knew that whatever it was, it would be the kind of thing that doesn't stay in a courtroom. It would be something people talked about for years, something they would, quote, replay, analyze, and wonder whether it was truth or strategy. And yet in that moment, there was no performance in him, no rehearsed charisma, no charm. It's just a man about to speak his truth, or at least the version of it that he couldn't run from anymore. He stood there for a long moment without saying a word, not out of hesitation, but control. Sean Combs was no stranger to rooms watching him. But this wasn't a stage, and these weren't fans. These were jurors, a judge, a gallery full of quiet eyes that had seen pieces of him that were never meant to be seen, and yet he didn't flinch. "I want to speak not as a mogul, not as an icon, not as someone you've seen in interviews or headlines," he said, voice low, steady. "I want to speak as the man who's lived in silence longer than most people realize." The courtroom stayed perfectly still. No coughs, no shifting in seats, just focus. Diddy's voice wasn't the kind they'd heard on albums. It was deeper, worn, stripped. "I've built my name on control that's not just branding, it's the truth. Control of my narrative, my image, my business, even the people around me. I told myself it was necessary, that it was survival, that when you grow up with nothing, you have to make sure no one ever takes what you build. And somewhere along the line, I stopped asking myself whether I was right. I only asked if I was untouchable." He looked down for a second, not in shame, but like he was walking back. Through the rooms in his mind, I've heard what's been said in this courtroom. Some of it true, some of it exaggerated, and some of it darker than even. I expected would surface, but what matters to me now isn't what's proven, it's what I know. I know that power without accountability rots the soul. I know I let fear speak louder than conscience. I know. I allowed people to be heard under the shelter of my silence. One juror leaned forward. Elbows on knees, eyes locked on him. I'm not asking this. Court for forgiveness. He continued, I know how that sounds. Like I'm trying to rewrite the script of my life at the 11th hour. I'm not. I've had years, decades of being protected by lawyers, teams, handlers. PR spin damage control, they built me walls I paid them to, and now I'm standing here realizing I was the one hiding behind them. He took a breath, long, shaky. There was a time when I convinced myself that what I did was necessary business survival sometimes. I thought if I don't do it, someone else will, but See, now what starts as ambition becomes something else. When you stop looking people in the eyes, I stopped seeing faces. I saw threats or opportunities. Never people. The judge watched closely. His pen sat still over the paper in front of him. Diddy's tone didn't rise, but it hit harder with every sentence. There are people who will never speak in this room. People who were silenced not by money, not even by threats, but by history. People whose truth I buried under success, distractions, payouts. And the shame of that sits with me. He gripped the edges of the podium, his knuckles white. So, no, I'm not here to beg, and I'm not here to play the victim. I'm here to say this plainly. I failed as a man, as a leader, as someone who once promised himself he'd be different in that moment. The courtroom wasn't just listening, it was witnessing. Not an admission of every count. Not a legal confession, but a fracture. A letting go of something heavy and carefully hidden, and there was no taking it back. I didn't come from a world that teaches you how to deal with guilt, he continued, eyes locked on the jury now. Where I came from, you learn to survive. You learn to move, to climb, you don't stop, you don't look back, and if something hurts you, bury it. Deep, that's the rule. He stepped slightly away from the podium, not in dramatics, but like his thoughts were pulling him forward. Survival turned into success, and success turned into armor. I walked through rooms where no one said no to me, where people nodded before I finished a sentence. That kind of power, it doesn't just corrupt, it blinds you. You start thinking you're making smart decisions when, really, you're just silencing consequences. He turned toward the judge. Now I built a business, a brand. A movement. I gave people jobs, created opportunities, but none of that excuses the people I failed behind closed doors, the assistants. I overworked the artists, I underpaid the people I promised protection, and then abandoned when they became inconvenient. The gallery shifted. Some of them had been those people, or knew someone who had, what hurts the most. He said, voice tightening, not the fall, not the headlines, not even this courtroom. What hurts the most is realizing that some of the people I cared about stopped looking at me like I was human, and maybe I deserve that because I stopped treating them like they were. He looked back to the jury. I used to think everything could be fixed, that money could erase anything. That if I kept giving enough, building enough, performing enough, nobody would ever see what I kept buried. But this trial, this room, it made me look, and I hate what I saw. His hands relaxed on the edge of the podium. Now his voice softer, but every word hit like a confession wrapped in stone. I'm not the man I pretended to be. I'm not a monster either, but somewhere in between. Those extremes is the version of me that I'm trying to own right now. The one who didn't stop things. He should have the one who let fear, ego, and legacy make decisions that should have come from the heart. He glanced at the ceiling, then slowly backed. Dan, I used to think that silence was strength, that showing weakness would get you killed or at least canneled. But silence cost me more than I realized. It didn't just hurt others. It hollowed me out bit by bit. The courtroom had stopped feeling like a room. It felt like a mirror, and everyone inside was staring into it. I'm not here to ask you to ignore the facts, he said. You've seen them. You've heard the testimonies. I'm not here to erase that. I'm here because I finally understand something. I should have learned a long time ago that truth doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just waits for a man to get tired of lying to himself. He stepped back, took a breath, and for a moment, just a flicker, you could see the boy he used to be not. The mogul, not the boss, just a man standing in front of a silence that finally spoke back. He turned slightly toward the gallery, now toward the people in the back rows, some of them familiar, others complete strangers. The tension in their faces was undeniable.